Welcome to this presentation on Decision Making Mastery. Your host here, Massy, teacher, strategist, author of a few books, and in particular, a book called Decision Making Mastery, which I'm writing through the course of 2020, a very interesting year to observe for decision making. So it was quite interesting. I decided to write a book about decision making, and quite interesting to see the decision making processes occurring around the globe over the course of 2020. So it gave me interesting perspectives into, the pluses and the minuses and the good and the bad and the things that contribute to high quality decisions and the things that disrupt our ability to make decisions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I've finished the first draft of the Decision Making Mastery book. So still, there's some refining to be done there, but I'm going to share with you the best of what I know for now, so you can take that with you. Once I've finished the book, I'm going to make the audio book available online for the Life Masterclass. So that's going to be awesome, coming soon. So let's dip into it. Over the course of the year, the thing that I learnt was the most important thing when it comes to decision making is our ability to call a time out. And this will be made extremely evidently clear as I drop into the actual process of decision making. So remember this signal, this symbol, this intervention when it comes to decision making. And just do a few practices now. One hand there horizontal, other hand comes up perpendicular, wave that up in the air, make sure it's clearly seen. Articulate it. Make sure you brief your team on what it means. Time out if they don't already know. Okay, so let me drop into, this is the actual preparation process. I'm going to go through step by step what I think is the best way to go through this decision making process. And obviously in my book I go in a little bit more detail, breaking each of the pieces and parts down. And also a lot of information on the things that lead into our ability to make good decisions, down to, and we've already talked about this in the Life Masterclass, down to our values. Making sure that our decisions are aligned with our values. Extremely important. Okay, so here we go. Some of the most important things and the biggest mistakes I think so many people make when it comes to making decisions. And you have already got an understanding about how this brain works, and if the brain is like a muscle in the sense that it needs to have the right fuel, it needs to be well hydrated, it needs to be well rested. The more you can, exercise and move this thing, the more resilience, the more growth, the more strength it has. So the first thing when it comes to making good decisions, it's, am I in the right physical state to make the decision that I need to make now, based on what are the consequences of making a bad decision? Now, if the decision is, where do I eat? It's, not big consequences, so it's not going to be that impactful if you're not in the best state to make that. But let me assure you, if you're not in the great state and you're trying to decide which restaurant or cafe to go into, and you've got your boyfriend or girlfriend there trying to have this conversation with you, it's going to be worth being in the right physical state. So you realize now, if you're hangry, how hard is it to actually make a decision? You've got two choices and you can't even make a decision between two simple things about what food am I going to put in my pie hole. So first and foremost, creating the right physical state. So again, that's making sure we're in this physical state. Here's where the timeout comes. If you're not in that physical state, you call a timeout. You step outside, you have a drink of water, you munch on some almonds, or you have a bite of an apple, you have something that's like bringing some good fuel into your body. You step outside and you look over the greenery and you start relaxing your face and your brain and your eyes, because maybe you've been sitting in front of your computer for an extended period of time, so you need that restive state. And when you've done the physical tick in the box, you may well be ready to start making some high-power decisions. So this is, again, if you're in a work context, if you're trying to make big decisions with important consequences and you're not in the right physical state, you are going to make subpar So you can call a timeout with your boss and say, look, I can make this decision now, and you're going to get a 70 or 80% solution, good quality decision. Or you can give me a 15-minute break. I'm going to go stretch my legs, breathe in some fresh oxygen, drink some water, have a little bit of a snack, and then we'll come back in and we'll nail this thing. That's how we use this conscious awareness of the impact of our brain and the physiology of our brain on our ability to make great decisions. Next one, we've ticked that off. Am I in the right and the optimum emotional state for this? Like, this has been one of the biggest challenges over the course of 2020. So a lot of people have made decisions while they're in a reactive and fearful state. And as I say, when we're in those reactive or fearful states, we're probably operating from the midbrain, the mammalian brain, or the lower brain, cerebellum, the reptilian brain. We're all about survival. We're not about, consequences, longer term consequences, periphery consequences. So many decisions have been made in 2020 by people in a fearful state that have caused them to narrow in and focus on the immediacy of decision without any consideration for the consequences. Think economy, think deaths by despair. When suicide rate goes up because people are feeling isolated, people are disconnected, all of those things. So when it comes to a personal level, we need to make our decisions when we're in a calm, clear, centered, grounded, stable state of mind, emotional state, in those elevated emotional states. That's where we're going to come up with our most creative solutions to it. So again, this emotional state we're in, it has a huge impact. Again, time out. Maybe I need to do some tapping. Maybe I need to do some pranayama. Maybe I need to bust out some yoga moves. Maybe I need to walk out in nature. Maybe I need to take my shoes off and walk on the grass and ground myself, do some earthing. Whatever it is to alter and change that emotional state. Absolutely essential. Once we're in this right state, it's about, okay, what's the result that we want? This idea of start with the end in mind. What is the end result I want in this particular case? And then, once you've got clear of that end result, and we talked about this on having a successful day, this idea of starting with the end of mind, that Stephen Covey, when he talked about the 7 habits of highly effective people, the people that were clear about what their end state looked like, either the visual or the intentional state, that end state. So get clear about your desire. So this is all part of the preparation. Get clear of the facts. Holy bajolis, 2020, people just using stuff which barely even came close to being about 10% fact. And the thing with facts too is once we have new facts, throwing out the old facts, as time goes by, as more information becomes available, as we have more clear data, as something goes from a hypothesis to a fact because there's subjective and experimental evidence coming back to suggest, okay, we were way off on this thing, here's the fact. Let's look at 2020, specific example. This ridiculous modelling thing from the Imperial College in London, talking about, the amount of deaths that were going to be through this corona show. And, maybe, before there's some information feedback coming, people could be forgiven for, being grossly inaccurate in these things. But as fact becomes more prevalent, as data becomes more specific, then it's throwing that stuff out. Always working to upgrade the quality of the facts. In the intelligence community, it's all about, and this is in the military as well, we're always trying to get that intelligence information, get as much fact as we can, keep upgrading that intelligence, and always looking for the highest quality intelligence. And that highest quality intelligence might actually come from triangulating 3 different sources. So information comes from 3 different directions. We collaborate it, and then we go, okay, based on observations and feedback from these 3 different areas, this is actually a pretty high quality fact. A lot of times it's difficult to get to 100% certainty in fact. So obviously it's something that's got a 90% certainty versus a 10%. The 90% certainty is going to be much better be used as a piece of information to make a decision as opposed to something that's about 10%. Okay, so that's part 1, preparing. And then we jump into part 2, the process. We've talked about these mental states, being in, say, an alpha brainwave state, which allows you to sort of join the dots between different parts of your brain, allows a little bit more creative flow, allows a bit more imagineering, all of that sort of stuff going on. So that's curiosity at work and, doing the creative thing. So I often say that if someone can't figure something out, there might be a lack of clarity. Obviously, the facts can influence the quality of the decision you can make, but so much of it comes down to creativity. So I had a client one time who said she was unable to exercise each day. And I said, I don't believe that. She lived in New York, single mum, 2 kids. I imagine that's a tough gig, and I acknowledged that. But I said, I don't believe you that you don't have time to exercise in a day. And what we did was, first we got creative about what constitutes exercise. It's actually moving the body, elevating the heart rate, getting some breath going. That's exercise. And then we got creative about how can you actually create that experience. And we got down to, can you find 10 minutes in the day to put some music on to dance around, and maybe even dance around with your 2 kids and bring a bit of a connection piece into that. So again, that was just getting creative. So the creative process, so important, using the lens of curiosity, so important. We need to be in the right state to be able to access those creative faculties of the brain. And that's why the preparation part of this, making sure you're in the right physical and emotional state, are so important because they directly impact your creativity. So once you've come up with these creative solutions, and again, I'm not going to go, deep dive into how to make these different decisions. It generally comes down to having a few options, looking at the pros and cons of different options, looking at whether they're aligned with your values, looking at some other factors that may be specific to yourself. And we do that with wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge plus experience. Obviously, that comes into it, and we want to be conscious. So we want to have this conscious awareness, this broad and high perspective when it comes to the decision making. And we may need to draw someone else into this situation who may have greater level of wisdom in a particular area that you need in order to make the decision. So this can mean at this point that you go for resources outside of yourself to support the decision-making process, to bring in a little bit more knowledge and experience into that, but making sure that there's this level of consciousness, this conscious awareness of all of the pieces and all of the parts. Consciously aware that if something isn't aligned with values, then it really is not a good choice, likely to be a poor choice. Once a decision is made, the process is this decision is a potentially good decision. So it's potential, it's thought at the moment, it's not actual physical form. In order to turn that thought into physical form, we need to step forward courageously. So we actually need to step across the line, and I think a lot of challenge for a lot of people. They might come up with some great ideas, come up with some great decisions, but they hit the fear barrier and they're too scared to actually step over the line and put their decision out into the world for the world to see and to get feedback on that. So in order to get past this fear barrier, I recommend that the fuel we need isn't confidence, it's courage. Courage is going to help us step through that fear. Courage is stepping into something even though it's uncomfortable, being able to do that. So this is the fuel we need as part of this decision-making process, because again, that decision is a potentially good decision, but it's a thought at the moment. It hasn't actually been put into action. So it's not until you step across the line and actually put it into real world scenario and situation that you actually get feedback to understand, is it actually a good decision, or do I need to make some changes along the way? And again, courage is necessary to be able to draw that feedback without taking it personally. So we make a decision, we do something, and then we get feedback, and maybe the feedback is positive, maybe in inverted commas it's negative, but all of that feedback is useful for us in order to modify the plan if it needs to. So that feedback is information coming back. Some people call failure, and I talked about there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback. So anything across the line that you get, even if in inverted commas someone would call it failure, that's just feedback. So part of the process is I've come up with this great idea, I've courageously stepped into it. Now I need, as I bring it into real world, to interpret the feedback from it to actually see whether it is a good decision or whether I need to make changes along the way. So I sort of loop back into that process and I get back into getting creative. I've got that feedback. Now do I need to get creative? Well, now I get creative and I determine how do I need to modify this to fit this real world situation. You know, the people that just go with a one size fits all template and try to force something square into a round hole, like the feedback is, hey, it's the wrong shape. Then we get creative. Okay, how can I creatively turn this square into a circle so it fits through that circular funnel? That's where we get creative. And that's the importance, again, of being in the right physical, emotional state so I can continue that level of creativity. And then it comes back to upgrading your decision. So you've got creative, you've come up with different things, upgrade your decision. And then you're sort of back through this loop process. Upgrade your decision, step forward again courageously, get some feedback, get creative about the feedback, make adjustments, update and upgrade your decision as required, and then continuing through that process. There's an acronym that Tony Robbins uses called CANI. It's constant and never-ending improvement. So this idea of feedback, improve, feedback, improve, feedback, improve. And the improvement coming through that creativity, and creativity being possible because you're in the right physical and mental and emotional and spiritual state. So you see how all of these things fit together. So again, that time out that you learn way at the front end is essential for us. Now, just a couple other points I want to make before I close this up. So I've got this GPS picture there, and the GPS is an indicator that we have this internal guidance system. And if we're tuned into our internal guidance system, which needs us to be in the right emotional state, which requires us to be calm, stable, connected to something deeper. And I talked about the inner wisdom of our heart is just generally a soft voice. So the more we can get quiet, the more we can hear this internal guidance system. But just like the GPS, if we don't really take a good read on this internal guidance system, when we do something stupid, we make a poor choice, that isn't the end of life. Just like the GPS system, this internal guidance system rearranges itself to help you guide yourself through the next steps based on that, in inverted commas, bad choice that you made. So it's just checking in and realizing that life is for you, not against you. If you make a poor choice, which turns out to be a poor choice in a relationship, life is about how can I use that experience to make you level up. So again, it's just reorganizing things all the time. That's what life is for when you're open to it, when you connect to it, when you allow to let it work through you and from you. The next thing is about choosing your environment. And when I decided to leave the yoga practice, one of the things I did was I made sure, okay, I'm in a bit of a frustrated state because a couple of things had happened. I'm not making a decision in that state. So I made sure that I was in the right mental state, emotional state to make a decision. That decision being whether I leave the business and whether I sell my shares. The next thing, I make sure I'm in the right physical state. Then I make sure I find the right environment which is conducive to me being in a calm, stable state of mind, quiet and able to observe, sense, feel, experience this internal guidance system which is giving me feedback on the direction of my life moving forward. So again, I find that environment, I'm like there and I've got this open mind and I'm calm and I'm relaxed and I let these things move and groove through me, and from within that space, then I can start making these decisions about which way to move forward. So for me, and you've heard me talk about this already, the importance of making sure we've created the environment which is conducive to this decision-making process. And just for reference, that's east coast of Bali, a place called Chandidasa. Highly recommend it if you want some quiet thinking time. I'm probably going to go up there the middle of next month after we finish the Life Masterclass and work on the second draft of this book, Decision Making Mastery. So it all fits in together. Now, one of the processes and one of the techniques and one of the strategies I like, and I've read a book, and I think the book's called Embraining. I've got it down in the references. Essentially what they're saying is these three brains is when something comes in, we want to check with our heart. Is it aligned with our heart? Like, does it meet and match our heart? So I'm trying to make a decision. What's my heart telling me? And then once I've sort of got a measure on that, and usually it's a pretty simple sort of feedback from the heart, it's got a deeper resonance to it. Then I take it up to my brain and I ask my brain, my intellectualness, based on this thing, what's my brain telling me? And the brain might come up with some different ideas, and that's my creativity. And then I take it down to my gut and I ask my gut, what's my gut telling me on this particular decision I'm making? And my gut is sort of leaning towards life or leaning away from death, like leaning towards pleasure, avoiding pain. Again, it's very primal. So I ask my heart where it's at with this decision, then I go to my head, then I go to my gut, and then I come back up to my heart and consolidate it. And I want to make my decisions based from my heart, because my heart, again, is the biggest electromagnetic field. It's the thing that's going to influence the quantum field. Someone who wants something with all their heart is more likely to succeed than someone who has a great idea up in their grey matter. So our heart is such a big part of the process. So that's an interesting process to go through. Again, just a simple strategy to add a little bit more depth to your decision making, to ensure your decision making isn't just all head, or isn't just all gut, or isn't just all heart, using all parts of self. The next one, and this is something that I've used in business, I've used it in my life, I've used it a lot. What it comes down to is asking yourself in decision making, particularly, well, it doesn't have to be a decision between two, but it's saying, is what I'm looking at doing essential or is it desirable? In the business, someone would come up with a business idea and would say, is it essential or desirable? In productivity, this is one of the key pieces as well. Is this essential or desirable? So we make decisions, so we're always working with the stuff that's most essential. So powerful, powerful stuff. And like I said, you've already been introduced to this sort of thinking in the productivity stuff, always working on the most important stuff. And this is a way to help us drop in there. Is it essential or is it desirable? So there you go, decision-making mastery, acknowledging that your decisions shape your destiny. So you're part of the co-creation process as you improve the quality of the decisions you make. Biggest takeaway, hopefully you got clear on this time out. If you're not in the right mental, emotional, physical state, call a timeout. I have the process with Ferry, my girlfriend. If I'm not in the right mental or physical state to make a decision on something that's important for her, we call a timeout, and we both acknowledge that it's better to have that timeout to make a higher quality decision rather than make a decision under duress in the short term, which may have longer term negative consequences because you made it when you weren't in your best state of mind and your best state of being. As always, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask me those, bring those up in our coaching conversations. I'd love to answer anything that you might have along the way. And again, like I said, book's going to come out in 2021. The audio book I'll be putting on here for the Life Masterclass. So another awesome bonus coming your way in the not too distant future. So wherever you are on this beautiful, amazing, gorgeous planet of ours, have an absolutely fantastic day. Remember your time's out. Make good decisions. Make the world a better place. And take care.